there are a number of things that they really latch onto. One of those is the notion that human beings are defined linguistically. They're defined by language, right? And this is a shift just in philosophy in general in the 20th century. It's been called the linguistic shift.
Right.
Right. So you have the rise of all sorts of movements. I mean, this happens from all over the place. So you think of things like postmodernism, but it's not just postmodernism. You have people like Wittgenstein, and you have the early and late Wittgenstein, which both rely on linguistic philosophy but contradict one another. And then you have the way that the existentialists are speaking of language in certain ways. And then you have the rise of speech act theory, which is from John Austin, which tends to be kind of the most important for the development of contemporary Lutheran thought. But you have, in general, a shift from understanding of, well, what you have philosophically, right, to kind of give you the very broad overview, right? The older philosophers talk a lot about being, what being is. And with the Enlightenment, we have a shift toward the questions of knowledge, really starting with Descartes and modern philosophy, epistemology, questions of how do we know what we know. And then you have this other shift in the 20th century to now questions of language. And language becomes, for many, definitional of what reality is. Yeah, and it's not, the shifts into the subject of language in philosophy is not all bad. I'm not trying to say it's all bad,
and
because
you do say that. You make a lot of caveats in this book, which I appreciate too, because you're like, well, it's not all bad, but I am saying that this is what's going on. So
so there's a lot of truth in the fact that language does shape how we view reality. Right, the language
and it
around
creates reality when God speaks.
And when we're speaking theologically, right, we have this strong doctrine of the word, so that what God says happens.
Right.
The performative word of God, right? That speech is ultimately comes as the instrument of creation. This is why Christ is the word, right? He is the logos. And I don't think we can grab onto that phrase logos and say this is, has a one-to-one identification with the Platonic logos or divine reason.
Right.
Only. I think that's part of what John is getting at, but I certainly don't think that's the entirety of what John is getting at. I think John is kind of actually combining both the Hellenistic and Hebraic ideas there purposefully. So it's the divine reason that eternally existed with God, but he's also that creative word of Genesis 1. Which is why I actually think these things fit together well. I don't think that we have to oppose them, which is part of my argument, is we don't have to have these complete oppositions between Hebraic and Hellenistic thought. That's one of the primary mistakes of the entire 20th century theologically.